Jets fans, I hope you're listening. Because, yes, it was another brutal week for you, another brutal day for you. Because this dumpster fire season just continues to go on. 0-5 on the year. Lowest scoring offense in the NFL. With an offensive-minded head coach, mind you. And now, on Tuesday, they do make some big waves, make some big news by announcing that they are cutting Le'Veon Bell, a man that they signed to a 4-year, $52.5 million deal last offseason, a guy who was signed by a general manager in Mike McHagnon that was fired a month later, a guy the head coach doesn't want. Sounds like the new general manager, Joe Douglas, doesn't want. And finally, that saga has come to an end, sending some shockwaves, at least around the NFL, that, hey, Jets are going to Jets. But is there hope? Is there some sort of glimmer of hope? Or is there some sort of sign you can point to that says, you know what? Maybe there was a shot that Jets could turn this around. Not this year. Probably not even next year. This is a multi-year plan rebuild, right? Not saying there's no, trust me, with this roster, with this organization, there's no quick fix. They're not going from worst to first. But is there a glimmer of hope you can look to in 2, 3, 4 years that maybe this can turn around? I think there is. Coming out of this Le'Veon Bell move specifically, I think there is. Now, before I get into that, this is predicated on one move. An obvious move, mind you. But this is predicated on a massive move that first starts, which, again, we haven't seen yet. We've seen 2 head coaches lose their job in Bill O'Brien and Dan Quinn. Adam Gase is still employed. But this whole turnaround for the Jets, this whole having hope, having something to point to, say, hey, listen, maybe there's a shot we actually turn this around. We don't screw it up. Because as a Mets fan, I know what it's like to have incompetent ownership, have an incompetent team, and basically have your team be the laughing stock of the league. The Mets are the laughing stock of baseball, and the Jets are the laughing stock of the NFL. So this, what I'm about to say, is predicated on the fact that they have to move on from Adam Gase. He's been a terrible fit from the start, obviously. Their offense, not telling you, not earth-shattering, not groundbreaking here. Their offense has been abysmal. Adam Gase, the so-called quarterback whisperer, the so-called offensive genius that Jets owner Woody Johnson, or I guess I should say Christopher Johnson, has deemed. Well, their quarterback they drafted top first round has regressed. There's really, so far, zero buy-in from this team with Adam Gase, right? Now, what do you hear? Through 5 games, you always hear about the practices aren't great. They're not practicing hard. They're practicing terribly, and that's what's leading to terrible games. And guess what? This is not the first time that Adam Gase has had players call him out, have players upset with him. I mean, let's just go back to Miami really quick. Dolphins players loathed Adam Gase. Jarvis Landry couldn't wait to get out of there. Other players are demanding trades if Adam Gase is still the head coach. So now we just talked about Ryan Tannehill and the Titans, right? Part of the reason why I'm starting to really buy into the Titans is because Ryan Tannehill's play, to me, is actually sustainable. I thought what it was last year was almost a flukish, right? Where he had one great second half of the year, but okay, is that really sustainable? We know Ryan Tannehill in his career is usually not that good. But part of my buying with the Titans is my starting to think is that, listen, maybe Ryan Tannehill with the Dolphins didn't work out. Maybe he wasn't as good as he should have been because Adam Gase was his head coach. And now that he got out of that situation, he went to Tennessee with a competent offensive mind in Arthur Smith and a well-run team and organization led by Mike Vrabel. But you know what? Maybe that's all he needed. Maybe all he needed was some competent coaching, and this is actually who Ryan Tannehill is. A quarterback that can win you games, that can make the big throw when needed to help you win games. I think that's exactly what's going to happen with Sam Darnold if the Jets decide to move on from this offseason. So what I'm about to say is a long-winded way of saying it. This is obviously the first move is to get rid of Adam Gase. Easy. Again, not earth-shattering, not groundbreaking. Everybody and their mother knows that. But there are, speaking of which, so if that happens, there are 2 moves I want to point to that the Jets have done with Joe Douglas so far this season that I think shows that at least there was some competency there. There is a hope and a prayer that, you know what, maybe they actually have their eyes set on the future. Maybe they actually have, how about this, a plan. They actually have a plan because that's really what the Jets have been missing for, it feels like forever, a plan. The first move I want to look at is when Joe Douglas traded away Jamal Adams earlier this year before the season started. He traded away a safety who wanted to get paid a ridiculous amount of money. Don't get me wrong. Jamal Adams is a great player. He's the heart and soul of that defense. He's a guy you want on your team. But with where the Jets are right now on their team, with what he was asking for, wanting to get paid basically over $17 million, not just be the highest paid safety in the league, be one of the highest paid defensive players in the league. Sorry, you can't do that. Not for a safety. Not for where the Jets are right now, where they're one or two pieces away from being a title contender, which they're not. If they were, that's one thing. They are nowhere close to that. So trade away Jamal Adams, who guy was being a malcontent because he wasn't getting what he wanted. You got two first-round picks back and a safety in Bradley McDougall. You know what? I'll give Joe Douglas credit there. You got max value for a player that the Seahawks not only have to give 2 first-round picks for, they have to pay at some point. You see those deals made for players like Jalen Ramsey, for Khalil Mack. Important positions, defensive ends and corners. Safety is not valued like that, and the Seahawks still gave up 2 first-round picks. I give Joe Douglas a lot of credit for that. So he didn't succumb to the pressure of trying to sign Jamal Adams to a deal that would have overpaid him. You got draft picks back, which is one of the best things and the biggest things the Jets need going forward. This is not a win-now situation. This is not a turn it around, we'll compete next year sort of thing. This is about gaining as much assets as possible because the future right now is more important than the present. And to me, that translated over to the second move I want to highlight, which is cutting Le'Veon Bell on Tuesday. Like I said, he signed a massive deal for agency, 4 years, $52.5 million. The Jets spent, honestly, like drunken sailors in that 2019 offseason. Mike McCagnon, realizing his job's on the line, said, you know what? If I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out swinging. We're signing free agents. You signed Le'Veon Bell to that big deal. You signed C.J. Mosley to a massive deal. The Jets and Mike McCagnon spent money in free agency. Like, one, they were 1 or 2 players away from competing. And 2, like they thought the best way to rebuild the team is through free agency. That is not the case. The best way to build a team is through the draft. And credit to the Jets. I'll give the Jets some sort of credit here. Joe Douglas saw this is not working out with Le'Veon Bell. He's unhappy. The offense stinks. Adam Gase didn't even want him here. Maybe I don't even want him here. So they tried to find a trade. Couldn't find a trade partner. You know what? They could have held on to him. They said, screw it. We're already paying the money. We're just going to cut bait. Because Le'Veon Bell's getting his money no matter what. It's guaranteed this year. So whether you cut him, you're still paying him. Whether he plays, you're still paying him. So I'll at least give Joe Douglas credit that, you know what? There was a sunk cost there. We realized this is not going to work out. We realized, you know what? This is only going to be a situation that's going to get worse, not better. Time to move on. I think that was the right move. Now, jettisoning talent is not exactly a good way to win. Because the team is the way it is, because Adam Gase is just awful at his job, you got to at least make the situation not as toxic as possible. And at least from reports coming out here, the only way the Jets were going to be able to trade Bell and get something in return is if they attach a draft pick to him. Which that's the one thing the Jets can't afford to do right now. They need as many draft picks as possible. So at least those 2 moves gives me some sort of hope that, you know what, maybe there is a plan in the future that says, you know what, now it is gone. It's a lost cause to win now. It's a lost cause to win next year. But maybe 2 years from now when we accumulate all these draft picks, maybe 3 years from now, there could be something where, you know what, we get enough talent, we scout well, we draft well, which is what Joe Douglas was brought here to be, right? He is a scout. His strength is scouting. So in theory, that should mean you should hit on these draft picks, build through the draft, and have success doing so. So with that said, the two areas the Jets have an opportunity to actually have a plan moving forward is one, like I said, firing Adam Gase. But not only firing Adam Gase. This should be the prerequisite. This should be the only sort of requirement for the next Jets head coach. Find a culture setter. Not an offensive guru. Not the next, Sean McVay. Because unfortunately for those guys who only focus on offense, who are supposed to bring some sort of dynamic game planning to the situation, the Jets don't need that. Well, they do, but this is what I mean. They need something greater than that. They need a culture setter. This organization is toxic. It starts all the way at the top, and it is so hard to overcome bad ownership. But I like Joe Douglas so far. He has brought some stability to the organization. If you could bring a culture setter, a guy like Brian Flores, what he's done so far in Miami, a guy like Mike Vrabel, we just talked about the Titans a lot. Mike Vrabel has set the tone in Tennessee. The team has taken his identity. They bought in. They are playing hard for him. That's what you need. The Jets haven't had a culture setter really since what? Probably Rex Ryan? You need someone to come in who's, forget offensive mind, forget defensive mind, who can set the tone, take control of this organization, and right the ship. Because that is a way tougher demand, way tougher job than you think. So sure, having a Sean McVay type, if you draft Trevor Lawrence or if you keep Sam Darnold, sure, it could help the offense really bloom. It could help the offense turn around to maybe become somewhat competent. But it's so hard to overcome incompetency, bad ownership, that they need someone to take the bull by the horns. So you can do that, you get a culture setter head coach, collect as many draft picks as possible. To me, the Jets should be mirroring, see what's going on in Miami, and try to do that same exact thing. It would behoove the Jets long term to not tank, because I don't consider what the Dolphins are doing tanking. They are gathering as many assets as possible because Brian Flores still has that team playing really hard. The young guys are on the field and they're playing. But this entire roster for the Jets needs to make over. Really, outside of Mekhi Becton, I would argue Sam Darnold, but a lot of people also are gone on Sam Darnold or done with Sam Darnold. There's one, maybe two players on this entire Jets roster where you point to as being untouchable. This entire roster needs to make over. The best way to do that, the cheapest way to do that, and the most sustainable way to do that is through the draft. Now, have a ton of money for free agency next year. Don't fall into the same trap you did in 2019. Free agency is there when you are one or two pieces away. When you need a position of need, when you think we are ready to go, here's one thing we need fixed. The Seahawks are ready to win now with Russell Wilson as their quarterback. Defense, they recognized was a weakness, especially in the secondary. That's why they went all in on Jamal Adams. Jets can't afford to build the team through free agency. And I think so far, at least, Joe Douglas has come off of the organization seeming like he has a plan for the future. Accumulating draft picks, shipping off assets when they are at their highest value, and build for the future 5 years from now rather than try to win right now. So Jets fans, I'm very curious your thoughts. Is there any sort of hope? Is there any sort of hope that the Jets can turn it around? Is there any sort of glimmer in the future you can point to say, you know what, maybe this is not a total and complete dumpster fire? Maybe getting ready and basically just cutting bait with Le'Veon Bell, trading Jamal Adams is, you know what, a sign that maybe this team has a plan for the future that they could turn around.